All right, guys, what's up? So I'm trying my hardest to make something here that's not going to be like somehow political or will get people upset or anything like that. You may, if you've been following the news closely, you may know that there is a bill that passed recently over in Colorado called the right to repair that allows, for example, farmers to be able to repair their own farm equipment and do so without having to take the thing over to the proprietary guy who's got the proprietary part to do the proprietary whatever thing to it, right? It's something that I personally am very much in favor of, something I want to see come around to more tech products to hopefully try to remove the dominating impact that corporations have over the lives of ordinary citizens in the United States and elsewhere around the world. You might wonder what in the world any of this has to do with baseball simulations. Well, I'll tell you. It was back in, I believe, either January or February of this year that Out of the Park Baseball removed unceremoniously the ability to play with any of the Japanese professional baseball teams and really players from its games. There are people now who are going to argue with me about this and say, well, not all the players' names changed. Not all of this stuff changed. This didn't change. That didn't change. I know this because when I talked about this on the forums, you can't talk about this on the OOTP forums, by the way, but on other forums, I had responses like this. So I'll tell you really quickly kind of what's happened, right? So Out of the Park Baseball, back in the good old days, I'm talking 10 plus years ago, was a game that was mostly like a game engine that they would sell. And the databases, the players and other things that came about were largely the creation of the player base, not of the company, or at least that's the way it technically was. When I first bought Out of the Park Baseball a little bit over a decade ago, there were numerous databases you could choose from when you started up a new save. There were tools available that would allow you to edit databases and change it into basically whatever it is that you want. There's all sorts of crazy stuff that you could do. Unfortunately, as time went on, a lot of that functionality left the game. The reason why it left the game is because around 2015, Out of the Park Developments got a exclusivity deal with Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association to allow Out of the Park to use officially Major League Baseball logos and officially to use the names and likenesses of current players in the game. Right now, I am aware, and I know this is another issue, I am aware that there have been court rulings that allow other tabletop games and other things to use players' statistical likenesses and their names in their products. I know that that also went to court because, frankly, for many years, the Players Association was charging exorbitant fees for the privilege of allowing you to use names and stats that were easily available elsewhere. That's a completely different subject. However, what happened is after OOTP got this license from Major League Baseball, it cut off the ability of its fan base to create their own databases and to use them. But it continued to use databases that had been pre-created, right? With a few caveats. OOTP, though, continued to maintain these databases, including databases that included information on minor league baseball players and Major League Baseball players, and some earlier information, such as which high school players attended and so on and so forth, right? There were not any, so in today's OOTP database, there is not any data on historic Korean or Japanese players. There's no Japanese players anywhere anyway, right? The change in policy that has come finally was to say if there is a league that OOTP does not have a license for, then it just simply won't be in the game. Because what happened early this year is people were going along playing their saves as normal, playing their projects as normal, and suddenly there was an update that came along that turned all teams that were official pro-yaku, so Nippon professional baseball teams in Japan, into teams, I think, located in South Africa, right? And so I believe that this also had an impact on individual players. So you would have like a star pitcher playing on your major league team like 50 years in the future, and overnight he became South African, but he still had the same abilities and same skills. This caused a huge amount of upset feelings and contention on the forums, so much so that as a preventative measure, the official OOTP forums decided to ban uses of the phrases like Nippon Professional Baseball or NPB. I don't know, if I went over there in Japanese and wrote Nihon Yaku Kikyo or Pro Yaku or something like that in like I don't know, like hiragana, or if I wrote it in kanji, I don't know that I would necessarily be banned. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. It might just be automatically censored, right? But that's what happened as a result. Discussion about this was immediately stifled. The information that came from the company that was official was very, very it was very sketchy. There was not a whole lot of information that came out about why this happened. There were rumors that came about all over the place about, well, maybe Konami, which has the exclusivity rights to the NPB team likenesses and player likenesses, maybe they threatened to sue OOTP, and rather OOTP's parent company, which I think might be a possibility. But the approach to this, though, was heavy-handed enough for me to sort of doubt that that would be exactly what's going on. I'm certain that this happens with other games, but it is very much a bone of contention between gamers and those who create these games. This policy of forcing updates into games and not allowing people to avoid them, right? So it's one thing if we're talking about, if you're playing like Football Manager like I do, and the new update came out and it fixed some sort of like AI mechanism that, you know, changes how the players move, you know, on the field or whatever. I mean, that's one thing, right? People might notice it, people might not. Some people like it, some people don't. But this was something that came along with some forewarning, but not much, and sort of came like a thief in the night and changed things irretrievably in people's games. And really, really has created, I believe, to this animosity that I believe continues to this day, assuming that people don't just forget about it because new shiny object has appeared again in front of them, right? This is a problem. I think. Now, I'm not going to advocate that we have to have a right to replay Bill or anything like that, but I do think that those of us who play these games have a right to start our projects and have a right to keep them going the way that we see fit. And I do think it would be at least preferable or nice if those who created these games would create some sort of option that does not automatically update, that allows us to play with the game in a certain version the way that we like to, or keep our setup, instead of changing it sort of arbitrarily because of a mistake that the game company made. Right? This is the sort of thing that really should have made more gamers and more OTP players furious. But, you know, I've been on message boards for, you know, the majority of my life, going back to the mid-90s, you know, and I know what happens. The company does something that's controversial, and so some people, you know, get really upset about it and say the company will go bankrupt, or they post all sorts of crazy stuff. Other people are not quite as upset about it, and then some people start to defend the company, and then they try to talk other people down, and then there's animosity on the forum, and usually the community is split in half between these, and people who want to go elsewhere will go elsewhere, and the others will stay around. Right? I've seen this happen time and time again with game after game after game. It always amazes me that there are people who are willing to stand up for companies that do not employ them and able to defend behavior that is poor. Now, based on my understanding of what happened here, the mistake was the mistake really of OOTP. When it went away from user-created databases, it should have gone completely away from them and should not have offered a continual Japanese baseball option. Now, I'm pretty sure that those who run OOTP developments were aware that if it took away the ability to play in Japan and other countries back in 2015, that the game would lose market share right away. Right. And so it decided to wait until now to take it away and lose that market share. I mean, it's something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but there's no reason why OTP should have continued to be offering Japanese player names and team likenesses and so on as part of its core game and as an advertised feature of its game when it did not have the right to do so and the legal license to do so. But the problem is that the way that they went about solving this problem ended up punishing their own customers, right? One thing I'll say about this is that if you have a whole bunch of old like APBA or Strat cards in the closet somewhere, and it turns out that like, you know, with your 40-year-old set that like, you know, afterwards there was some sort of like, I don't know, disagreement between this player and the Players Association, or there was some sort of like financial thing that happened. Like APBA, Strat, and the others aren't going to come to your house and like confiscate your card and put a big like black X over the name with a marker or something like that, right? That doesn't happen. The cards stay the same, right? So when you are creating your next project and you're thinking about what type of game to use, you're considering the old open source versus closed source thing, be careful, right? I like Steam. I like games that update, right? I think that that's a great idea and it's a good benefit to have. But these companies that are willing to jump in and change things at the last second, these companies that will make changes that are unalterable and make things horrible for their customers and then close off all discussion about their controversial decisions, these are not the companies that you really should be supporting, right? Keep that in mind. This is a major controversy that flared up for like a couple of weeks and seems to have died down. It shouldn't die down. OOTP did the wrong thing in this case. And it's another example in my mind of a list of examples that show that OOTP is a game that is run by a company that frankly is not very professional and that has a lot of problems. We'll dig more into OOTP as the months and years go by, but this is a video that I think really deserved to be made. Hope you have a good day. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.